On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
It's Saturday afternoon and you can see a cosy domestic scene here because we've just finished watching On the Track and Lilith and I have settled down for what my mother used to call 40 winks. But then, suddenly... Oh, here he is! Oh goodness me! Oh, he's been running around! Oh, come on! Go! Oh, bloody hell! That's it! Oh, bloody hell! Gracious me! Rowing! Everything! Oh gracious! Oh gracious!
Oh Christ, that's straight in my fucking nipple! He put his claw straight in my fucking nip! Oh! Oh!
Oh yes! Ain't blood lovely? Oh! Oh!
Joe, oh, he's been a trembling Terence, he's been a shivering Sean, he's been a shaking Simon. And what do you mean? Oh yes, he's an excitable Ichabod. That's what he is. Oh yes.
Oh, it's always exciting, especially for me and the dog, when Mr. Richard is in the house.
I really like the old credits.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs, and this young lady here is my cat, Lilith Tinkerbell. And welcome to a new episode of On the Track, which, if you don't know, is a weekly show put together by those jolly nice fellows at the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and it is entertaining, amusing, edifying, and other things beginning with E that I can't... Educational, that's it, educational. I can't remember why I always forget that. It's probably because I was always told that we don't need no education or something. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. Welcome to another show, and if you look there, you can see Richard Freeman's elbow. It's underneath a blanket. And, yes, I can't even remember how to do this. Look in that corner, you'll see Richard Freeman's elbow. Waggle your elbow, Richard! Which is a good way of announcing, if the introduction didn't already do so, that our special... I'm not going to call him a guest, because Richard and I have been partners in crime within the Centre for Fortean Zoology for something like 25 years. And it's not going to stop anytime soon. So Richard's not a guest. He's a much loved and much appreciated member of the CFZ family, and he's here this episode, which is all jolly nice, because I'm always very fond of Richard. Well, I've always been very fond of Richard, but I'm always impressed with the stuff that Richard talks about. So everything's going really rather well. Now, before we run out of stuff that I have to talk about, there is still time for you to put a suggestion in for contribution towards the Centre for Fortean Zoology Yearbook for 2022/23. There is still a little bit of room in it, although I have to congratulate Richard Muirhead Nearly said Richard Freeman. I got Richard Freeman on my mind today. Richard Muirhead has done an absolutely fantastic job, and I'm incredibly impressed with the way he's done it. I think this yearbook is going to be the best one for some years. So if you do want to put in a suggestion or a pictures idea for the yearbook, you've got another week or so. So please get in touch with me at John, that's cfzjohn@gmail.com. Apart from that, what else have I got to tell you? It looks now that Weird Weekend North is actually happening for the first time in some years, because the COVID virus and the various lockdowns have precluded any public events. And I'm happy to announce that once this COVID stuff is out of the way and I've sorted out a few more things in my private life, I am going to look to promoting another Weird Weekend. There may only be one more, but if we do one, it's going to be dedicated to Karina, and I really want to do one for her. But I think that if I can get away with doing one more, I'll probably try and do more and more and more after that. I'm not going to promise to make them annual. I'm not going to say exactly where they're going to be, because I don't know at the moment. But watch this space. It's the Weird Weekend in Devon is not dead yet. Or should I say, the great days of Weird Weekends in Devon are not done. Let's carry on with the show. A couple of episodes ago we had Richard Freeman and Carl Marshall, and amongst the things that Richard mentioned in passing was a visit that he made for an Australian TV company to the bottom tip of southwest Wales, because in Pembroke Dock, which is, you may or may not know, the main stopping off point in the southern half of Britain for ferries going to Ireland, in Pembroke Dock, of all places, somebody had reported seeing, and even more so photographed, a sea monster. So really, Richard, tell me, what happened?
Well, I was approached to do this show by an Australian TV company, and I hadn't heard of this sighting, but they said that a sea serpent had been reported from Pembroke Dock, and Pembroke Dock is the second deepest natural harbour in the world, down in Wales. I think the first deepest is in Australia somewhere. But we went along there, and the presenter was an incredibly beautiful woman called Natalie Schmidt, who I'm still friends with. She now works in whale conservation, and she's Australian, but she lives, I believe, in Canada now. And we stopped at this lovely little pub next to the dock, and a lot of people who were sitting in the pub just drinking and eating had seen this creature as it went by, and I talked to a number of them, and they said they'd seen this great long animal moving through the water. One man said he'd seen a diamond shaped fin come up, and others said they'd seen a head and neck come up, but it wasn't a great long neck, it was a relatively short neck with a wedge shaped head on it, and they were all agog at what was going by. The barmaid and the patrons, and they all saw it going down this down the dock, and they said that one guy I talked to said he measured it against the car ferry, because he sees the car ferry going the same route all the time. He said it was at least as long as the car ferry, and the car ferry can carry 5 cars tip to tip, which would make it at least 50 feet long. That's just the visible part of it. And what's more, there was a photograph and they said this photograph turned up. They don't know who took it, but someone had come and pinned it up to the notice board of the pub, saying, you know, I took this photograph, but they don't know who it was. But they said it was exactly the thing that they saw. So it must have been someone who had a similar viewpoint to what they did. It must have been somebody near to the pub looking out over the dock. And they still had the photograph there, so, you know, I took a photograph of the photograph. And that's the one that's done the rounds. We used it for an article in Animals and Men that I wrote about the whole case years and years and years ago. So nobody knows what the hell it was. It certainly wasn't a whale, because it didn't have any fins, it didn't spout. It wasn't a basking shark, for the same reasons, in that it didn't have fins. It was totally the wrong shape. Several of the witnesses had seen whales and basking sharks before, and they were adamant that this was not either of those. So the mystery was never solved, the creature never returned, whatever it was, and that was the end of that.
Back in another lifetime, I was in Pembroke Dock together with a school teacher and a bunch of his pupils who were all 13, 14, and they were diving in Pembroke Dock to try and map the numbers of different species of sponge that were living there. And they told me that the deeper you got, the weirder it got, and you had things like anglerfish that you never see in shallow water, and these were relatively common there. So it's not really surprising, I suppose, that despite the fact that it is in the middle of a man-made country, I think it's not that surprising, especially as you've said that whales and dolphins and sharks have been seen in there in the water, that a sea monster, which is going to be an unknown specimen of, or maybe even unknown species of either cetacean, pinniped or fish. I can't really think of anything else it's likely to be. And it does seem, despite the fact that it's full of people, that it's a fairly logical place for one of these things to turn up.
The description that people were giving and the overall vibe I got from it, from the photograph and from the descriptions, was a reptile rather than a mammal. It seemed like a huge reptile, although what it could be is anybody's guess. I don't believe that there are surviving plesiosaurs and surviving pliosaurs. Who knows? Possibly some sort of marine reptile that's evolved along similar lines. Whatever it is, it's utterly unknown to science.
Heuvelmann's is marine saurian.
Well, that's the thing it reminded me of the most, the marine sauria. Now, a lot of marine saurian sightings in the tropics, I think, are outsized saltwater crocodiles.
Either outsized or out of their normal range.
Yeah. The one that was supposed to have been forced to the surface by a depth charge in World War One is almost certainly a hoax. But there have been other reports of these.
But wasn't that in the Irish Sea?
Yes, that was off the coast of Southern Ireland.
And the Irish Sea is where Pembroke Dock goes into.
But that was almost certainly a hoax.
Why is that? Because it is one of those cases that even a century later that people seem to have quite a lot of credence in.
Because at the time the captain of the U-boat made no mention of it at all. None of the other crew had ever talked about it, and it was only decades later that he came up with this weird story. Who's a Popsy Dinkums baby?
Excuse me, Richard. Popsy Dinkums baby or no Popsy Dinkums baby? I've just got one question to ask you, and I've got V here, and he's chortling away. The dog's demolishing the place, and Richard's going on about Popsy Dinkums babies. Richard, one thing, see V's bloody snorkeling away. Richard, question. You said that one of the people who had witnessed the creature in Pembroke Dock had reported seeing a triangular shaped fin. But then you said there was no fin.
Yeah, I worded that really badly. What he saw was a big triangular shaped flipper on the side of it, not a fin on the back. So it wasn't like a fin on a whale or a shark. It was a big triangular shaped fin that came out of the water at the side of it. And then the head and the neck came up.
I got a question for you, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from the fact it would probably be completely pointless because the ocean is a massively big thing, if you were to try and do any investigations to follow up on this story, what would you do?
Good Lord. Now the thing is, as far as I know, it's never been seen before or since in Pembroke Dock. So it'd be pretty useless putting up cameras at Pembroke Dock.
Well, also, while we were doing this, I asked V, say hello to the boys and girls, V.
Hello, boys and girls.
I got V to check out on the paranormal database about anything else that strange that had happened in and about Pembroke Dock. And apart from a few fairly generic ghost stories, there was nothing. And so Pembroke Dock, its one real claim to fortune fame, is this story about the undeniably peculiar but fascinating sea monster. Richard and I have been friends for many years. In fact, we realised just a few minutes ago with the start that we've been friends for over a quarter of a century, which does seem, even at my advanced age, to be quite a heavy big deal. And a year or so ago he recommended that I buy a novel called The Apparition Phase by Will MacLean. And I did, and then promptly forgot all about it. The other night I was in bed, I couldn't sleep properly, which is, I'm afraid, something which happens more and more often these days. And I had a look to see what there was floating around on the Kindle app on my iPad. And guess what I found? I found The Apparition Phase, having completely forgotten that Richard was the guy who introduced it to me. So I read it, and I tell you what, I have seldom read a book that good. It is as good, if not better, than the book by the Perambulator, which I recommended you before Christmas, and which I gave to a lot of the younger people in my extended family just because I knew that it was a totally far-out book that would turn them on. They'd really enjoy reading it. But I tell you what, if you don't want to know what you're getting for Christmas this year, put your fingers in your ears, because I think an awful lot of my extended family are going to get The Apparition Phase. Now, one of my problems has always been, I'm a book reviewer, amongst other things, and when you're reviewing a non-fiction book, whilst it's not necessary to be as terse as Richard was when reviewing a book about the butterflies of Hong Kong, when he wrote, "Do you like butterflies? Do you like Hong Kong? Then you'll love the butterflies of Hong Kong," and that was it. It's not necessary to be that terse, but anybody reviewing a book called The Butterflies of Hong Kong will know that the reader needs to know what the book is about. And in this case it's about Lepidoptera, of particular the Papilionidea of Hong Kong. But it's not quite the same when you're dealing with fiction, because I really hate giving away any of the plot twists or basically being a spoiler in any of the non-fiction stuff that I review. So what I can tell you, the words Apparition Phase don't actually come into it until about 3/4 of the way through, and that's all I'm going to tell you about the story. It is set in the early to mid 1970s, when I was growing up, and most of the characters in it are only a year or two older than I would have been. They're going to be the same sort of age as my late wife was in the mid-70s. And it tells the story of a pair of twins who try to fake a ghost photograph, and later on one of them gets involved with a peculiar psychic experiment, and I'm not going to tell you anything else. But there are so many references to the Forteana of the time, although McLean, you got it wrong in one case. You said that Jeff the Talking Mongoose was in the 1940s. Well, he wasn't. He was in the 1930s. So there are plenty of references to the Forteana of the time and to the Fortean books of the time, such as Our Haunted Kingdom and the Gazetteer of British Ghosts, and Anthony Hipsley Cox's book, and I can't remember what that was called. Weirdly, Anthony Hipsley Cox lived in Woolsbury, so I knew him when my parents invited him to dinner. They didn't like him very much because he was too arty-farty. I don't think he liked them very much because they were too old-school patrician, and I just sat in the middle. Archie, be quiet, please. So, here we have an absolutely bloody fantastic book. I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I seriously suggest you go out and get hold of a copy. Capiche?
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page, and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, wants me to remind you, always press the notification bell. Otherwise you won't be told when there's a new show to watch. And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it? And so Lilith and I reach the end of another episode. Well, we hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you found it edifying, educational, entertaining, and, I don't know, whatever else begins with E. But we have a couple of things that we need to tell you about. Regular CFZ watchers will have realised that, as well as our Saturday afternoon show, and yes, there's only another 7 days to go, we do a shorter show now on Wednesday afternoons, Wednesday tea time at 5 o'clock. And the really eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed we have now dipped our toes into the heady waters of YouTube Shorts. Now, I have always found the idea of making shows very short because young people allegedly have such low attention spans absolutely annoying, and I won't do that. However, I'm actually quite enjoying doing the YouTube shorts because they are a new experience for me. It's a bit like painting miniatures. And I do hope that what I do can be fun as well as educational. Just check this one out. People like to think that we know everything about the natural world. Well, I'm afraid that's just simply not true. Look at these. They're baboons, supposedly the most intelligent monkey. But did you know that they're incredibly dangerous to humans, and that they even have weird sexual deviancy habits which have been known all the way through history? In this week's episode of On the Track, we look at the history of baboon-human interactions, and we find out that these horrific accounts may well be evidence towards the existence of one of Africa's most elusive mystery animals. Check out the link in the description below. Be seeing you. But why are we doing them if we're not doing them to pander to the low attention spans of the hoi polloi? Well, it's really simple. We're once again trying to persuade the YouTube algorithms that CFZ TV is a really top-notch and far-out broadcasting channel, and that the YouTube algorithms, and I'm still not really sure what an algorithm is, should be able to promote what we do in a way which will get us more views, and hopefully from that more people to work with the CFZ doing our stuff around the world. So that's why we're doing the YouTube shorts. And if you want to know more, go over to our Prime Minister.
On the Track is a show about rampant hard science ramping up weird shit in an unprecedented collective surreality, just like dear old Pliny the Elder at Thermopylae. And if you're coming to the after party, bring your own bottle of Bolly.
See, he explained it quite succinctly. As I said, it's going to be only another 7 days until On the Track is round again, because every Saturday afternoon at 3, I bring you a monumental concatenation of hard science, weird shit, and half-assed sorry alchemy, which I think is quite fun and usually involves some sort of a glove puppet or rubber mask, which makes me happy, and as one of the reasons I do this show is to make me happy, then it fulfills that goal. However, boys and girls, like I said, only another 7 days to go. And as you've probably gathered by now, the waits to try and say, when I say be seeing you, he tries to say it at exactly the same time I do each episode. So this is for you, V. If you guys are there to watch us and I'm there to watch you, I'll